Breaking news, Paul Ryan is running for House Speaker, which is going to preempt most of what I prepared to say for this segment. So let's see what happens. Now, yesterday, prior to this tiny breaking news slice, he said that he would consider running for House Speaker, but he had a number of caveats, a number of rules that mainly the House Freedom Caucus, the secretive, shadowy organization of nut jobs, would have to agree to, that they would have to support him overwhelmingly, 80%. He would need time off. He would need to, their assurance that they would they'd change the rules so that they couldn't take him out mid-session or speakers going forward, and that he would refuse the idea that he would not raise the debt ceiling without attaching it to substantial entitlement reform. So he said, okay, I will run if you agree to all those things. Now we know he's running. Does that mean that they agreed to those things?
They didn't
Not
sound,
so much.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they agreed to it. They said they'd support him. Or they didn't say they'd support him as a block because they're crazy people. They need 80% to have an official endorsement, but he's clearly got most of them.
Yeah, we've got the numbers, actually. So in a caucus vote, this is earlier today, about 2/3 of the members of the Freedom Caucus said they were comfortable supporting Ryan as Speaker, according to those present. However, they did not reach the 80% support line that the caucus requires to give its endorsement. So, first of all, that's number one. He said he would run if 80% supported. They did not, but he's running. This is a member of the caucus sending a message to Paul Ryan. We are sending the message to the conference and Paul Ryan that he has our support, but that we will continue to ask for the changes that we are asking for, because they had laid out the requirements that he was responding to. Mick Mulvaney says, we are not meeting all of his demands, but if he wants to be Speaker, he has the votes as of tonight. So if you pull back on all of those things you said, if we've called your bluff, back off, boy, and then run anyway, we'll let you run. Effectively, that's what they're saying. Tim Huelskamp, actually, we have him on video saying this, so why don't we jump to video 5, responding to some of the demands that I laid out.
They are demands, not conditions, and I was kind of surprised. I mean, this is a serious job, and it's a person that's only 2 heartbeats away from the president, and you walk in and say, here's the list of my demands. No. And what Paul Ryan said mystified many of us. I think he was being honest when he said he didn't want the job. But this is not a 9-to-5 Monday through Friday job. It's a lot more than that. He has to make clear of how he is different than John Boehner. John Boehner has lost his job. He's on the way out. We all understand that. He did some good things, but he's done as Speaker. Paul Ryan was at his right hand all along. How will you do things differently, Paul? But clearly it looks like Paul Ryan doesn't want the job, and that'll play heavily in my mind. If you don't want the job, I want somebody who actually wants the job.
I didn't notice the first time I watched that. So they had already denied him all of his requests but one. They hadn't mentioned at that point the family not doing the weekend fundraising and having time for his family. But there he slipped in, this isn't a Monday through Friday 9-to-5 job. Yeah, so Paul Ryan is running and has apparently, with the evidence that we have so far, gotten nothing that he asked for.
I mean, keep in mind, those guys, the Freedom Caucus is not the whole. They can mess stuff up, but it's not the majority of the Republicans in the House.
Yeah, it's a group of approximately 40, although we don't know exactly who's in it. But still influential. If you have something over 200 Republicans in the House, that's a good chunk.
No, as John Boehner learned, if you don't have those guys, you can't get anything done, even stuff that Republicans now would, I think, be enormously happy with.
Yeah. But overall, I have to say that while I don't know who's in the Freedom Caucus necessarily, because they refuse to be open about it, they're a wily bunch, because Paul Ryan, I thought, made a good move by saying, you guys need me so badly, I can pretty much ask for whatever I want. And then he put it on them to either accept his demands or go with somebody from Florida that no one's ever heard of. And then they flipped it right back on him and said that we'll support you, and you have to choose or deny. They gave him nothing, and he folded. And I had honestly believed that perhaps he wasn't as ambitious as I thought he was a few years ago, and that he didn't just genuinely want the position for the sake of being the Speaker, but that he would do it only with these caveats. And now he's running. So
we don't know. I mean, the fact is, a majority of them, 67%, so roughly 27 more or less. Again, we don't know exactly how many are in there, but around 40. 27 or so of those guys he's got support. So if he has 27 of those guys, then maybe he has enough of, maybe he has 27 votes for the things that he wants to do.
So you think that they might be putting up a strong face, but
there might be. It's not inconceivable that there's a wedge in the crazy wing of the Republican Party. With 40 members of Congress running, essentially dictating everything the House does right now, with 435 members.
See, I see the creation of the House Freedom Caucus earlier this year as the wedge. That apparently a group of 40 had become so crazy that they needed to segregate themselves to ensure the purity of their craziness from the other crazies.
I don't know, but the fact is the Republicans have, what, 247 Republicans, so there's about 205 Republicans who aren't in that caucus.
That's true.
Desperately, most of whom want Paul Ryan. So, you know, it's not like he's just listening to these guys. Those guys are there too, and maybe 20 of them are like, look, I got it, Paul. We want this. And, I mean, Paul Ryan's so conservative. Jesus Christ.
I know, it's insanity that he is.
But, you know, some of these guys may have thought the longer we vote is Wednesday, the longer we let this go on, this becomes a serious problem.
We look terrible, and God knows who we'll get.
Right. They're not beyond not understanding that. And they may have, by the way, and then privately, they may have convinced, hey, we're not giving it to him. We can still, we can revolt. We can give him nothing until we get somebody else. We'll put it through. Yeah. We may go through this again. Let's see how he does. Let's move this chapter on. I have no idea, but we don't know yet. So we'll have to wait and see what assurances he got to decide to run.
I think it's your last theory. I think that they're saying, no, he'll still do it. They read him accurately. We're not going to give him any of that. And if he doesn't play ball, we're going to treat him like we treated Boehner. We're going to smack him around every day. And if he doesn't shut down the government every time somebody blinks, then we're just going to get rid of him. And he walked right into it, which shows a level of, unless there are secret behind closed doors deals that give him some of what he wanted, it just shows the level of weakness I didn't expect out of him. And as you point out, he's no liberal. He's no moderate. I mean, this is a guy who was raised on Ayn Rand. That's his economic policy. I mean, he's going to be a disaster, and especially when their key issues, their core issues, seem to be these economic issues of wanting to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, wanting to not raise the debt ceiling, regardless of their own spending plans. Combining that with a Paul Ryan is certainly better than some options, but it's not good for America, I think, objectively.
No, yeah, there was no upside here for America. But thank God that you'll have the opportunity to vote these guys out of office in November, except you won't.
Why not?
Because it's rigged.
I see what you're saying. You're gerrymandering the money, yeah.
Yeah, great. We picked up 4 seats from a Congress with an approval rating of 9. You know,
it's absurd.
Right. I mean, the fact is, there's 247 Republicans. We should be beating 120 Republicans and 58 Democrats should lose, you know, or whatever. But that's amazing. That's not going to happen.